Was it tucked in?
Now when I walk, no,
When you walked into the building, or you tucked it in before the meeting started?
I tucked it in before the meeting started.
Oh, that's funny, because I literally, you walked across at some point, maybe it was to go to the bathroom between, I was like, I don't think his shirt was tucked in earlier.
First time for everything.
Well, you know, it's all good. Oh. All right. We're so close now. Let's find the right meeting. There we go.
Jonathan, when are they gonna start Wilder?
Well, they're probably, end of June, beginning of July.
Okay, they're gonna wait that.
Yeah,
Winship looks good.
it does.
You know, all the framework is up and
1, 2, 3,
All right.
4, 5, 6.
Got it,
they
everyone?
started Schrader.
And Amber on the phone is 9, right?
call to order the Facilities Committee of the Whole meeting for Tuesday, May 27th, 2025. First item on our agenda is the consideration of our meeting minutes from March 31st, 2025. I would seek a motion to approve. It's been moved by Dr. Lund. Is there a second? Second by Mr. Anderson. Take a roll call vote.
Lund,
Yes.
Flynn,
Yes.
Tomasino,
Yes.
Larson,
Yes.
Clevin,
Yes.
Hodak,
Yes.
Anderson,
Yes.
Manley,
Yes.
Berger,
Yes.
9 yes, 0 no, 0 absent.
Motion passes. Item 3, presentation of facilities assessment tool and recommended ending fund balance. Mr. Elwine, Mr. Bombach, either,
Yeah.
both of you?
Just as he's coming up, it's going to be absolutely Jonathan's show here. He's put a lot of time into not just these slides, but everything that went into this assessment. This started a while back. It was brought forward at a conversation at Finance. It needs to come to Facilities Committee of the Whole, and it needs to be at the Finance and back to the board. But ultimately, we set ourselves a goal for a general fund ending fund balance, and we talked a lot about doing the same for a building fund. So that's the table dressing.
Thank you, President Berger and the committee. I appreciate you allowing me to present today. I'm going to start off the presentation, like all good presentations, by going off book. Just to give a little bit of a history on this, because I realized I kind of neglected that. So about a year ago, as Brandon said, we were talking about minimum balances as it related to our general fund, and the Finance Committee asked us, well, how much do we need to keep in our building fund as a reserve? And Brandon and I kind of shrugged our shoulders and said, that's a good question. So we did some research, we talked, and we looked at where our peer districts are, and really the answer was there isn't a good standard. So we thought, let's build a standard then. So that kind of takes us into the crux of our presentation. The agenda, we're going to walk through why the reserves matter, our rubric and methodology, our district-wide condition summary, reserve fund targets, and then timelines. And again, feel free to stop me at any time for questions. So why do minimum reserves matter? They protect us against unexpected facility costs. They avoid disruptions to instructional planning and staff. They reduce pressure on the general fund, which was an issue we had in the past. And they support long-term planning and financial stability, which we'll get to toward the end of the presentation, because we get a lot of questions of, how much money can we spend, what projects can we do, and this is really the first guidepost, because we don't really know what we can do until we know how much money we need to keep in the bank. And it keeps focus on students and not surprise repairs. It allows us to keep our schools running efficiently and effectively, and putting the focus on them and not a boiler failure or a roof leak. We've got multiple layers of protection here. The one we're presenting on today is that first layer, that cash reserves. They allow the district to move quickly on critical repairs. We have some other tools in our toolbox as well. Insurance protects us against any costs incurred by damage, and financing allows us to spread the costs over multiple years. So even if we do have to make a large spend, we can then finance that and spread that cost over multiple years. Now we'll go into the financial facility scorecard, our overview and methodology. So the facility scorecard, really what I wanted to do when I created this tool, with the help of our buildings and grounds team as well as industry partners, was to really put a number on everything, instead of just saying, okay, we think we need about $500,000. So we're actually going to go through each and every part of the building, give it a score, and then attach a dollar amount per square foot to that score. Like I said, the methods, we did internal assessments guided by industry standards. Multipliers is a very important part of this. So we looked at what are the critical parts of our building. So we determined that our envelope, our roof, our electrical, and our plumbing are critical to our building and therefore carry heavier weight than some other things like interior finish and grounds. Our inputs were the age of systems. This is especially important for, say, roofs or HVAC, looking at when did we do the repairs last, how old is the mechanical equipment. Work order trends, we have a work order system, so every single time we do a repair, someone says, okay, we have a leaky roof, or it's cold in my room. We actually track all of those, and we can see trends by school, by room, even by equipment. It gets that granular on where we're spending the most time and the most money. Compliance is largely related to ADA and accessibility, and then staff and industry partner input. So I went through and assessed these buildings myself. I also worked with our supervisor team. They went through and assessed the buildings themselves. And then we worked with the people actually working on the equipment. They assessed them, and we talked to building level people like custodians where they thought the biggest issues were, and they gave their ratings as well. And then related to this, in your board packet is, I didn't want to put it up here because it's a bunch of pages, is a facilities assessment tool. So it really breaks down what the numbering means. So we're all giving the same ratings. So we can say a 2 on plumbing means this, or a 3 on HVAC means that. In addition to that, we worked with some industry partners. We have some great industry partners, including the work that ICON and construction engineers did on our facilities assessments, as well as working with other outside entities, like specifically a roofing company. They do some assessments for us, as well as other design and construction partners. If you'll bear with me on this one, I'm actually just going to walk through all of these, so we're all on the same page when we're talking about them. So these are the systems we assess. Our envelope, which are our exterior walls, windows and doors. They protect the building from outside elements. HVAC, heating, cooling, and ventilation. It regulates our indoor climate and air quality. Roof, just generally the upper protective cover of the building. Also means things like overhangs and any type of shelter on the front of the building. Plumbing, our water supply, drainage, and restroom infrastructure. Electrical, power systems for lighting, outlets, and equipment operation. Interior finishes, visible interior surfaces such as floors, ceilings, and paint. And this is a good example too. If I can go back to plumbing, interior finishes too would consider, say we have a bathroom that has a bunch of fixtures in it that work perfectly well but look really outdated. To me, in this case, that's an interior finish. Because they're still functioning as they're supposed to, the plumbing is good, the interior finish may not match where we want it to be. Safety are our fire protection systems, alarms, communications, and building security, including, as we're working through our safety and security portion of the referendum, our controlled access. Accessibility is compliance with ADA standards, but not just that, just ensuring access by individuals with disabilities. There are some things that are by the book ADA accessible, which are still burdens to people with a disability, so we make sure we look at that as well when we're rating these. The grounds are our exterior site areas, including landscaping, paving, parking lot, walkways, our trees, our bushes, flower beds. And then we'll move on to our facilities scorecard. So as you can see, there's a lot of numbers up there. So overall, we did pretty good, I thought anyway. So we have very few schools that are not in the excellent or good rating. 2 of them are Twining and Valley, which were our 2 lowest rated schools, which makes sense because they're both slated for replacement. But then we also have 3 that are in the fair condition. We have Central High School, Schrader Middle School, and Wilder Elementary School. And those all have some deficits, as you can see. Plumbing is a big one, as well as with Schrader, the roof and the HVAC. Any questions at this point? This has been shared with the Finance Committee only. So the summary of this, 11.1% of schools rated poor or critical, we had no critical, but we had poor, Valley Middle School and Twining. like I said, are slated for replacement. And district-wide, our average was 7.2 or a good rating. As we replace those schools, our rating will go off, or will go up, and as we do our safety and security projects and ongoing maintenance, the idea is to bring that number up and to bring them all into a good or better than good condition. Walking through our critical systems averages, we have our envelope was at a 7.69, our HVAC was a 7.19, roof was 7.44, our plumbing was by far the lowest at 5.56. It's often one that gets neglected because you don't see it and it's doesn't seem like a problem until really it's too late. And electrical at 6.75. And I'm actually going to back up one for 1 second. If you look at the bottom there, you can see those multipliers. That's what I talked about at the beginning. So each one of those carries a different weight in this score. As you can see, envelope, roof carry the most, HVAC's a little bit less, plumbing, electrical, safety, a little bit less, and then things like interior finishes and grounds are even less than 1. Yes, sir.
Just a couple follow-ups. First of all, I love this. It's very easy to understand. It helps us establish priorities. Well done, well done, well done. Any idea how projects that are already in the hopper might address some of these? In other words, if you could put an asterisk by some of these numbers to say, I'm going to say Schrader HVAC, right? In 2 years, we expect this to be, right? I mean, almost a hot map of which, and maybe this is coming or a conversation for a different day. But in a sense, if you could highlight the 8 lowest numbers in these cells to say, we're already on top of 6 of these. This is just this year's workflow. This is next year's workflow. Any sense of how close we are? Let's just say, and I'm just going to choose an arbitrary number, that all the 3s and 4s become 5s and 6s. Could you just walk us through briefly what's most likely to bump these up in the short term?
Yeah, I don't have a great answer for that now. I'll give one anecdote, but first I'll start with, that's really what we'll talk about more at the end, is this is going to inform our facilities plan and kind of give you guys the tools to say, hey, these are our priorities. I can look at a building and say, yeah, this is my priority, but my priority is going to be very different, say, than the board's priority, because I'm not interfaced with the public every day. But a good example is on here, Lewis and Clark actually was a fair. And then with the replacement of our communication system, it brought the safety up, and that brought it to a good, leading to a reduction in the reserve need of about $30,000.
Great, I think that's a fair answer. And then my 1A is, how often will you revisit this type of evaluation? What's the sequence?
Yep, we will be doing this annually, and I'll get to that in a few slides if that's okay.
Yeah, sure.
'Cause I'll break it down a little bit more. Actually, I think that is the very next slide. This is into the building fund reserve recommended minimum. So right now, our reserve target is $1.62 million. It's a per square foot reserve based on conditions. The condition reserve tiers are critical, $15 per square foot, poor, $5 per square foot, fair, $1.75 per square foot, good, 80 cents per square foot, and excellent, 50 cents per square foot. And how we got to these numbers is really we kind of worked backward. Because there's a lot of, we'll say, art more than science in this, where it's like, okay, we think we need this much, as I alluded to earlier. Okay, I think we need $1.5 million in there or whatever. And so I worked with our building staff as well as our construction partners, say, what about do you think we need? And then I wanted to create an exponential curve for the conditions. So as you know, it's more from fair to poor to critical. Each time it exponentially the reserve goes up. So yeah, I think we landed at about $1.5 million, and worked backwards from that, and we ended up with 1.62 million based on our square foot. Our condition and reserve review of the facilities are assessed annually, and we will go through these in the same manner each year, and as we complete projects to update these scores. And then the reserves will be adjusted annually based on Federal Reserve data. The Federal Reserve has very good data that is called the Producer Price Index, and they actually get very granular on construction costs. It doesn't go so far as saying school construction costs, but we can at least get an idea of how construction costs have changed in the last year. Any questions on that?
Go ahead, Mr. Clevin.
Can you use my microphone now?
Yes, you may.
All right. So you started with a number in mind
Mm-hmm.
and then kind of allocated that money based on those reserve tiers?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah,
And-
and this will be evaluated. Like I said, this is a starting point. We'll review this and see if this is prudent to what we think the reserves should be. But that's kind of how we got to this point.
And then the adjustment annually is, so we're not necessarily forecasting these numbers multiple years ahead of time. We just update them every year.
Correct.
Okay. Thanks.
While we're paused, Ms. Flynn on the phone, anything you want to ask about?
No.
Okay, the minimum reserve results, like the facility scorecard, we have a lot of numbers here, but this actually breaks it out by school, how much reserve we should be holding for each of those buildings. As you can see, schools like Central, very high, because it's a large school in fair condition. Even Red River, in good condition, very high. It's just very big. Versus, say, even a Wilder that's in fair condition, only $40,000. It's only 23,000 square feet. So we ended up with a total of, I think I had a math error because I got two different numbers there, but I think it's 1.617613. I think that's the right number, but I will double check on that. Oh, no, we're looking at area square feet. Okay. So yeah, 1.617 million approximately. And then we're going to walk through some example expenditures, and I'll put it on there. These are not actual numbers. This is just a walkthrough of how these numbers can change in the future. So we'll start up with these this example building fund expenditures. So our reserve is 1.62 million. Our maintenance budget is 1.5 million. Improvement budget 500,000. And if you'll allow me to misuse the word maintenance, I'm just breaking maintenance into saying that's what we need to maintain our current our buildings where they currently are, and the improvement is say, hey, we're gonna update this, and it's going to increase our scores. And these are just example numbers; these have no basis in reality. I just want to underscore that. So the conditions are we aim to get a 10% reduction of reserve needs in years 1, 3, and 5, assuming a 3% escalation of costs year over year. Our maintenance budget remains flat. That's just simply to reduce variables, and then our reserve savings will be placed in that improvement bucket. So in year 0, as you can see, 1.62 million, 1.5 million, 0.5 million. Year 1, we get about $113,000 that we reduced from the reserve amount that we could put into the improvement amount. Year 3, about another 60,000. And year 4, about another 113,000. So the results are we moved our reserve down from 1.62 to 1.35 million, and our improvement budget up from 500,000 to $773,500. And again, just to reiterate, not actual numbers. This is just an example of how these buckets can change as we improve things, as we reduce them. We can allocate more of that money toward improving our facilities. So what we ended up with was a 16.9% reduction in reserve needs and a 54.7% increase in improvement budget. Any questions? All right. Next steps. So we have some key deliverables here. This is the first one. We're bringing this building reserve conversation to the Facilities Committee today. And then we will, in the future, on Finance Committee on June 3rd, we will bring it to the Finance Committee for discussion, and then to the board June 9th for approval. So that will actually be an action item. And then we will use that going forward, starting next fiscal year. And like I said, that will allow us some guardrails on what we can spend in our maintenance projects. And just with the understanding that this is kind of the minimum we need. We may dip below that, but we would make the promise that if we would ever think we would need to dip below that, we would expressly inform the board of that. And then that will inform our facilities plan. Cindy was talking about it earlier, kind of possibly changing the cadence of this meeting, because our goal is to have a draft of a facilities plan in place by September 22nd, and then come back with a revision on November 24th. Any questions on that?
So should we take that to mean that in the agenda, it had our next meeting to be determined, but now we have a possible, how do we want to handle that? Do we want to leave it as to be determined?
And that's just, yeah, these are,
Okay, leave it as to be determined. Thank you.
any other questions?
Dr. Hodak.
Yes, I have a comment and a concern. First of all, excellent work. I mean, I would have loved to have had a tool like this when I was teaching facilities at the university. 2015-16, I ended up going back to Larimore to be their high school principal because they couldn't find one. My first day on the job, the senior class president came in to see me, and he said, "We have a problem within our school, and it has to do with facilities. And you talk about a group of students so highly impressed. It put the board totally in shock, but they actually had a video that they played, and they showed us all the areas that weren't being taken care of, weren't being maintained. And so that kicked a lot of priorities and goals because we were seeing it through the eyes of the students. So my question to you is, especially on that part, is when do you ask the principals or the school administrators of that building whether they would agree with that, whether it was fair, good? I think your process and everything else is excellent, but I would encourage you to somehow always ask those that are living it and walking it day to day about that. So it's just a comment, but again, I just absolutely am very, very impressed.
I appreciate the question and the comment. We did not ask for principal input on this from a building level. We did go to the custodians as they, in our minds, know the building best. But I will say, without revealing too much at this time, we do have a plan to engage principals on the facilities plan and make sure that their priorities are outlined. So I'm not prepared to present on that today, but we do have a plan in place for that.
And one last comment. It also helped us at Larimore to develop evaluation tools for our custodians. You've done excellent work.
Thank you.
Mr. Clevin?
And Jonathan, I think that was a good segue to a question I had is,
You can use it again.
well, that is talking loud enough, I guess not. Thank you. Okay, well anyways, so the building reserve fund is what you've established as the financial resource and a predictor for finance, right? And then back to kind of what Sherry was alluding to, the facilities plan is how you plan to spend the money. Individual projects, prioritization of this or that. Do I have that sequence right?
Partially. I'm actually going to back up a little bit here. Yeah. Let's see here, actually. Yeah, let's go here. So what we're looking at, this reserve, and I apologize, I didn't do a great job explaining this. So our reserve, we're looking at, this is our bottom. This is what we hold in the bank in case something catastrophic happens. Anything above that, we're still gonna do projects, we're still gonna maintain our buildings, we're still gonna improve our buildings. What we wanna know based on the condition of our buildings as well as the dollar amount of the systems, how much do we need to hold in case one of those events does happen? Obviously, this 1.62 million, if everything on the list went wrong at the same time, isn't gonna cover that. But if we did that, we would never do any facilities projects because we'd need $30 million in reserve. But this allows us to hold enough money based on the odds of something happening to act quickly on that. Does that answer your question?
I think so.
Okay.
May I offer?
Yeah, please.
So one thing to underscore that was an earlier slide, of course, is that this is just one tool. He just said it. But insurance is in place, other things just in case. But there's also financing. Now, that's not, we don't want to finance maintenance. But when it comes to a strategic, facilities plan 5 years out, these are big conversations. These are boundary line conversations. These are other things that other tools need to be considered, like financing, like public referendum, things like that. So when we take the step from this tool to the conversation in the fall about a 5-year facility plan, it's a lot more when we take that step. This here is not just about spending down that balance or controlling it, is knowing this is one tool that needs to be maintained in our overall facility, tool belt.
Yeah, and just to add, it just allows Brandon and I to look at, okay, when we do a pro forma, this is how much we think we're going to get in tax revenue. How much do we think we can spend 2 years from now on projects? So it allows us just to plan better in that aspect.
Mr. Palmasino?
Yeah, I think what the 1.6 also does is keeps us from dipping into the general fund. So if there's like we had to do 5 years ago, 3 years ago, when we had boilers going out in different locations, we have money available to correct those.
Other questions? I'm going to turn it to Ms. Flynn on the phone one more time.
No, thank you.
Other questions or comments from board members?
Just very nice job. Thank you.
Thank you. And then I've got one final, and this is just kind of to reiterate our timeline. So we have our reserve approval, we go to the facilities committee, finance, and the board, and then that will inform our facilities plan development, which we will bring to this committee in September and November. And then again, I have a slide for questions. Any other general questions?
Anything else? I hear thank yous echoing through the room. Any other questions? Please, Mr. Baumbach.
I apologize, I don't recall if this is in the memo, I was just looking, but I was a little too slow. Did you want any formal action from a facilities committee, the whole on this, endorsing the tool? A part of stopping at each of these each of the committees and then going to the board would be an endorsement of this ending fund balance?
So we don't have an item for action on our agenda.
I think it's going to finance. It's going to finance, and then they could send that recommendation, correct? Brandon?
Sorry, I was
No.
trying to listen in with my bat ears, it didn't work. But I would think that you could take action on this if you wanted to take that action. Finance could do the same, and it may just strengthens that by the time it comes to the board, if it's something that you're worth endorsing today.
Another idea, just 1 second, please, Dr. Lund, would be we could take a motion for this board to direct the finance committee to use this tool and move forward. We could do it one of two ways. So if somebody wants to make a motion, we can do that at some point. But Dr. Lund?
Well, my only concern is some of us are on finance, so we've talked about this a lot of times. There's some people on this board that they're hearing this for the first time, and I think it might put them in an uneasy position to endorse it with seeing it and endorsing it. So that's my only concern is, I feel comfortable, but I've sat through how many meetings of this, so. And it's not like, I mean, it eventually has to go to the board for final approval, which is this same group here. Anyway, so I just don't want to put somebody feeling uncomfortable having to make a decision that they feel rushed because they haven't had time to digest it.
Fundamentally, this just kind of feels like a administrative tool to administer the policy that's already been established. I actually don't think we need to take any action on it.
I think that's very fair, and I appreciate those comments, and I'm very, very comfortable, whatever you'd like to do tonight. The goal for the board memo would articulate, administrative recommendation that you do set a building fund minimum balance, an ending fund balance, to provide us a guideline similar to what the guide and change document has done for us in the general fund. It just helps keep us administratively going in that direction. The tool itself helps us get there, but it's the ending fund balance.
Then I can ask, might as well ask it here rather than at the full board meeting. So where do we come up with that 1.62 million, or is that something that you develop over time, or did I miss it when I had to step out to take a phone call?
We can back up. Yeah, I don't remember what you were here for or not. So essentially, I'll reiterate that I worked with our building level staff, our maintenance staff, as well as some of our construction partners, thinking about how much money do you think we need? We came to about $1.5 million. And then we created tiers in an exponential way based on square footage. We wanted to really get granular and say per square foot, how much do we need to hold? So it's just a very unbiased way of looking at things.
No, I understand that. What I'm saying is, okay, I want to have $10,000 in my bank account for my house. I have to come up with that $10,000 somewhere. So what I'm wondering from Brandon, where do we come up with that 1.62 million to put in the bank for this? Or is that something we build up over years or whatever?
Yeah, we're doing well. We're in the middle. We're still working our way through the Career Impact Academy project, so these numbers need to work out, but currently in that fund right now is a balance of 5.2 million, and that'll still get paid out and come down, so where we had an original estimate would have been ending this year with even 2.3 million. And the reason that changes is even in that project we've budgeted, but there's contingencies and things that you hope not to use. So we're in a good spot there. And just to reassure you too, it's a goal. We may achieve that, and as Jonathan said, sometimes things will come up and we need to break that, but every single expense out of the building fund requires board approval. So it'll always come back in front of the board, and this is just one more thing we're going to be able to bring with any request. Say, here's our balance. How are we doing against our goal?
That's helpful. I just didn't want us to be passing something in June that you guys then had to scramble for the money and stuff. I didn't want us to set administration up to have some problems, and it doesn't sound like that's going to be an issue. Thank you.
And this is
Mr. Clef?
10 mil levy, property tax levy funded fundamentally?
20.
20, okay.
I just have to jump in because you brought that up. There was a gap, so I think it was from like 2015 to 2021, we only had 10 mills to work with. We had 20 prior to that, and it was challenged all the way to the Supreme Court, and we lost that. So when we did Discovery, Red River Theater, redoing the Central Theater, Cushman, the 10 mills didn't even cover our debt. So 11.5 million came out of our general fund to pay for those catastrophic boiler failures, 2 relocatables at Viking. Those were really tough, lean years, that took our general fund down. So, but starting in 2021, when the voters who went to the poll and approved the 10 mills, we're in good shape now, better shape.
Any other conversation, discussion, questions? You have the final word.
All right, well, I appreciate your guys' time tonight. So I'm happy to meet with any board members if they need clarification, so feel free to reach out. So, thank you.
Thank you. I've been advised that our next meeting date is still to be determined, and we are